Chords.
What's up, y'all? It's Cousin Chat back with Dilligan on Dilligan's Island. And so it's been a couple weeks since we posted. Would like to apologize for that. We had some situations, had some situations. So here we are. Why are we not on the TV? What did I do?
Again, it's a whole production.
Yeah. We're playing with the live thing. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for the likes, the comments, the all the love that you're giving us. I really do appreciate it. I know I kind of get jokey and snarky about it at times, but I truly do appreciate everybody. I really do appreciate the support. It's Dylan and I do this because we really enjoy just having like some good conversations. And so we figure, why not do a podcast with it? And you know what?
You've never heard of a YouTube channel before called The Asian Capitalists, have you?
No.
It's just two guys who've known each other since high school, and they're in their like mid-30s now, and they're still friends. So they were like,
yeah, exactly.
We have interesting thoughts to share, and we have kind of a more philosophical view than the average Canadian or American.
And for those of you that support it, like it, appreciate it, I mean, I really thank you, because it would be cool if this actually was a podcast that, supported itself. So thank you. Thank you for the support that you are giving us.
I'm not gonna lie, I'd shit my pants if the Asian capitalists ever shot either of us an email.
Right. Thanks for mentioning us. Yep.
So my fanboy album.
Right. So tonight, before the podcast, we kind of started on our theme for the topic, the theme of the night. I think if you watch the show, you realize we're more themey than we are topic based. It's kind of like we get a theme. And then
in other words, we're more religious.
Huh?
In other words, I think we're more religious, where it's like the overall theme is more important than the details.
Yes, definitely. And if that's what you're meaning, yeah, I definitely agree.
It's a very perennial, classical way of...
Right, because this isn't like we're like some academics that are like, this is researched and verified. No, these are just two people with brains having thoughts and opinions. And thank you for listening to them. And so as we go into that tonight, we're going to talk about... Dylan has some interesting things to talk about, memes. And with that being said, take it away, Dylan.
Basically, the gist of it is, do you think you have free will or not?
That's right. We were at that.
Do you think you actively choose
is that
the story that you're living inside of? Do you think you're authoring the whole thing? Or is it more likely that you're just a material hunk of neurons and cells and tissue connecting each other, and you just respond as an organism would to external stimuli the way an organism would? And the question is, do you think that you're actually writing your own story? Do you think that you're actively changing the world you live in as you live in it? Because that's what free will means. It means it fucking matters that you're here if you have free will. If you get to decide what your whole being's life purpose and goal is, if you believe that for real, you're just you.
It's 8:13 on 8:13. Hi, everybody.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's ironic.
That's funny. Yeah, I just noticed it. It probably was going to happen all day. It probably happened twice today.
Yeah. But we were talking about memes.
Yeah.
And jeans.
Right.
That's what we was talking about in the back patio.
Right. We're talking about memes and jeans, and because part of that is that we're talking about what is a meme, right? A meme at the base core of a meme, the modern understanding as a meme is it's this funny picture, but the reality of the original word for meme, which actually goes back to the Greeks, right? I mean, this goes back to
memetics, which was this whole the Greeks thought of it almost like a magic system,
right?
But it was just playing memory games and keeping your memory sharp.
Right on.
But that was their word for it. Was, yeah, dude, that's magic. Don't call it anything other than what it feels like.
It's magic, and but that's where the original term for a meme, which is this, it's an idea, right? That's where it comes from, because it's an idea that carries across. That's why it's being attached to the ideas or the comedy or the humor or the emotions that this picture with these words now says on social media, right? That's what we call a modern meme, is something that's posted on social media, but it's derived from that idea of an idea. It's derived from the idea of an idea. And
it's like a handshake.
It's
you can connect some dots and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. If you're like a couple of knights from ye olden days and you're like, you greet another knight you don't know on the road,
right?
You're gonna grab each other's right arm, because statistically everyone's smart enough to recognize most people are right-handed.
So when we were talking about this a moment ago, though, you said something to the effect of that you think that ideas get kind of incorporated into our.
That's not my meme. That's Richard Dawkins' meme.
Richard Dawkins claims or suggests or postulates, whatever the fancy word is for the idea that he has about these ideas.
He's a renowned British biologist, and he was one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which was.
Hold on, the apocalypse already happened? What do you mean?
That was what they affectionately referred to as the 4 main militant atheists of the Western world that had a habit of going out and debating with like little podunk car salesman pastors.
Right?
Yeah, like they would go out of their way to debate those guys, to just be like, all right, I know how to make this guy look like a fool, even to the people he's already brainwashed.
Sure, and we have people that do that with different functions.
Yeah, it was real low-hanging fruit. But what's really interesting is when you see somebody like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens kind of died early, but he was the most bohemian out of any one of them. But Christopher Hitchens, he died before this, but when you see like Jordan Peterson having a really a genuinely philosophical argument about what it means to be religious, you can see how they come from totally different perspectives. Like they have all the same facts, but those facts could mean many different things.
So let me go back to Richard Dawkins has this idea about ideas, and yes, that they're linked to us in biological ways. Yeah. And one of the examples that you gave on the back porch was the handshake, right? And at the time, you just stuck out your hand, and I naturally, reasonably, just stuck up my hand, and we shared a handshake, right? Now,
it's universal in that way.
But to me, that's a cultural thing. It has nothing to do with our DNA. That's my opinion on the handshake, right? Because in other cultures, that handshake is different. Like, so, this is just coming from growing up, right? I walk up to a white man as a young man, right? Let's say 17, right? I walk up to in a business setting. I walk up to another man. I don't care if he's black or white. I'm in a business setting. I'm going to walk up and I'm going to shake I'm going to extend my hand. I'm going to look him in his eye and I'm going to give him a nice firm handshake with a couple.
Tie.
Yeah. But it's going to be firm. I'm going to match his firmness. You know what I mean? I'm going to look him in the eye. We're going to have a couple pumps and we're going to, disengage. Right.
Yeah.
That's cultural. Right. Because if I walk up to that same man in the club, right, and he's a mutual acquaintance of me, I am not going to walk up and extend my hand like I just want to do a gentleman's handshake. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to give him a dap. I'm going to give him a dap. So are you saying that using the hands is some kind of form of greeting in all the different handshakes? Because
like I actually learned that from reading Jordan Peterson's book, Maps of Meaning.
Yeah.
That technically speaking, you see more with your hands than you do anything else. Because the second you see this table, you can already register like the touch of it. You can register whether it's been sanded or whether it's splintery. It's like you have these extra sensory functions where it's like, yeah, what that basically means is your hands communicate as much as your eyes or your mouth does.
But I'm gonna stick to this idea that the handshake is beyond cultural.
Yeah.
Because to me, my personal opinion of it
that's
right now is that the handshake is a cultural thing, because I can go to different parts of different places, and the handshakes may or may not exist.
Like in Japan,
Like, for
they'll just
existence,
bow.
like, you know, in the Euro British kind of handshake culture, right? We do handshakes, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because as Hispanic as I technically am, I don't know the reality of this, but there are a lot of people in the Hispanic kind of Euro culture that do the whole kiss cheek thing. We don't do that, right? But that's their greeting, right? They don't come up
I
and
was
do
thinking of Italian.
they don't come up and do dappity dap dappity dappity dap dap, right? They come up, they give a little hug, they go mwah, 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 and then they go, and you understand what I'm saying? And so to me, if it was genetic, it would be across humanity more. I'm not saying it would be all encompassing.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point, I think, that I was getting at earlier, where it's not the genes that turn the memes on. The memes aren't the switchboards.
Turn the memes, right?
The switchboards are the genes, but the ideas that run through people's heads, that turns certain genes on, because it's basically a giant bubble that has swallowed up multiple switchboards. But you kind of experience your ideas before you ever think of them as being your genes expressing themselves.
I'm still not really sold on the. To me, the handshake is a behavior.
Yeah,
it's taught culturally. It's taught by models. It's taught because everybody else does.
Western. So if you're a Japanese
but Spain and Italy are also Western, and they don't necessarily do it. They do the kiss thing.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So
I mean, there's levels of gradation to that,
sure, but to me, it still is cultural, because even in the cultures where Europeans have spread and shown it, right? Like, in Arab countries, they probably wouldn't have done that necessarily, right? But they were like, oh, well, we got to work with these English motherfuckers, so we're going to handshake. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the suit, right? For a long time, people in the Middle East and Asia and stuff like that, they didn't wear suits because their attire was just different. But it was cultural to me. It wasn't, you understand? It wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, like there are certain behaviors that I will concede that I'm aware that there are certain behaviors that are attached to us biologically. At least I think that I remember being taught this.
But they're not necessarily biological.
Well, but the one that I brought up is snakes and spiders. Yeah. Like I think that I understood in a class that we have a natural kind of response, right? It's a subconscious, biological, because throughout time we're aware that these shapes, forms are dangerous. And so we see even a baby or a toddler that's never been modeled, never seen this thing.
Yeah.
He's going to freak out.
Yeah.
So there's one way that I can see a behavior that's attached to biological. I just don't think things like I think handshake's cultural.
Okay, so do you think that the idea of God is universal? Or do you think that...
I think the idea of what is this is universal.
Like, where did all this come from?
Yeah, what are we doing? What is this? Yeah. I think that in the human, and from a human perspective, I think it is universal, because my understanding of like Eastern philosophies is that they are philosophies. They don't to translate their philosophies into religions in the Western sense, where you have this idea of God, right, that is separate. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think it's like this is how I'd like to describe it. The ocean is everywhere, and it washes up on beaches all over the world. What they call it in their relationship to it is cultural. But the fact of the matter is, the ocean is there.
Yeah.
The ocean's there. How they respond to it, how they interact with it, that's part of their culture.
Okay, so at rock bottom, there is a overall.
Yeah, I think we're all
everything boils.
I think Lao Tzu was interacting with it just as much as Socrates, and if you remember, I mean, you know what I mean, just as much as Jesus, just as much as Muhammad, just as much as any of the other people that we look at, just as much as Buddha, just as much as I don't know about Confucius. You know what I mean?
My rabbit hole that I've been down over the last year and a half involves comparative religion.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
And what I've found...
I'll do this meme with you.
What I've found is that... Okay. So a meme is basically an idea like...
Can I have you hold that meme for a moment? Can you, good citizen, can you go to... Do you have Facebook?
I don't think.
So there we were in the middle of the woods, hiding from the government.
Live streaming.
All right, my bad. Go ahead.
Well, no. What my point was is okay. The Richard Dawkins' whole hypothesis is that memes dictate the direction of genes.
Okay. Memes dictate the direction of genes.
Genes are the drops.
To translate a little bit, ideas become the things that turn on and off the breaker switch of genes.
And ideas, they have a life of their own, the same way certain genetics do. But here's an example of one.
Okay.
So this whole myth, this whole frontiers myth of, well, you got to stay away from them porcupines, boy. Ain't you know porcupines shoot their quills? Mm-hmm. They just flick their rear and shoot them suckers right at you. Sorry. And then you'll get stuck with porcupine quills.
What are you watching that you're laughing at?
Boy.
He's watching us laughing at us. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, it's not big. But anyways, this whole idea of like porcupines can throw their quills at you. Didn't you know that?
Right.
No, I did not know that. I didn't understand porcupines were so sophisticated. And it's like if you're young enough when you hear that for the first time, you'll believe it.
Okay.
And it's like that'll stick with you and you'll avoid porcupines even more so from that point on because it's like...
But that's not genetic.
Exactly. It's a meme.
But how does...
It's an idea.
What is that meme doing genetically? Because that's what we're talking. We're talking about.
You're more likely to survive.
Memes.
You're more likely to survive going into the future because you'll be that much more likely to just, dude, we'll carve a trail around the woods to get away from a porcupine, but we don't fuck with porcupines. You're less likely to get an infection, gangrene, any sort of other pre-germ theory disease.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is, for this idea,
yeah,
it's not an actual gene. It's the idea that is giving us a survivability.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hedging the bets.
It's not affecting our DNA other than it is protecting the DNA of the set of people who are participating in this behavior.
Yeah. It's like Pascal's wager. It's like, okay, so God's not real and you spent your whole life believing he was. What'd you lose? I don't know. You tried a little harder. Like, you thought more about people conscientiously. You maintained like a worldview that allowed you to put yourself on an even playing field with other people. What'd you really lose? On the other hand, what if God is real and you don't believe that and you're wrong? Dog, you fucked up. That's basically Pascal's wager.
Right.
With a little more vernacular to it. But anyway, it's that idea of
Well,
like,
so
okay,
let me consider this though. If I think that okay, so let's say that there is a gene for altruism, right? And that every now and then there's a random person or random individual within a population set that is altruistic, and that this person has an idea of their altruism and they teach it, and other people that aren't genetically altruistic pick up these behaviors because of not the genetics but the idea. I mean, you following me?
yeah,
Because that's what you're talking about with the porcupine. Somebody told some little kid, "Don't go by the porcupine because it'll throw quills at you." Now the little kid's too young and naive to understand that Santa Claus isn't real. But this little kid who doesn't have a lot of exposure to porcupines, and a lot more exposure to Santa Claus, never realizes that porcupines don't do that until the day that he runs up on the porcupine and it doesn't shoot the quills, which never happens in his life because he lives in a city.
yeah,
So anyway, my point is that for part of this discussion is that the idea conserves a set of DNA, even though it in of itself is not DNA. That the decisions, the behavioral triggers that it causes, therefore have other causes, such as, like you said, not getting sick, infections, blah 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 blah. Because little kids are surviving, right? Because they're not running up hugging porcupines, right? Getting quills stuck in them, and therefore other things that result from that. And so I'm trying to translate that to another kind of example of I am aware that there is an altruistic kind of gene. Like some of us get triggered with an altruistic gene. Look it up. And so, but what I'm saying is that person that has that carries the gene, like let's say Jesus has the gene, right? He's got the altruistic gene. I live my life for everybody else, for the betterment of everybody else, right? That's what altruism is. Can I get somebody in the comments?
yeah. I believe that's right.
So altruism is a belief in or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others, right? So not everybody's altruistic, right? A lot of people are pretty down selfish. Like the lawnmower kid. Like, you know what I mean? Running by our window with his loud lawnmower. That's just selfish. I mean, I'm being selfish that I wish he wasn't doing it, right? Because he needs to mow his lawn.
That's the point.
But I'm being selfish because I don't want it because it affects me.
Everyone's entitled to a little bit of pettiness as long as they're willing to recognize that that's what being selfish is. It's being petty.
It is kind of being petty, right? I'm like, wow, this is inconvenient for our podcast.
That's not me.
But he at the same time would be like, why do I want to be inconvenient? Because I need to mow my grass right now. And I'm going to be inconvenienced because you want to sit there and talk to yourself on a camera? Really? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, my point is that I do believe that, like, if you look at evolutionary psychology, there's an understanding that there's a great benefit to altruism. And I think that it's kind of like in your idea that it's linked to there's this biological need within a population. Not everybody.
See, I don't think it's so much. It's better for me to live my life for everyone else. I think it's more like there's this gene in everybody that switches on when they recognize, oh, I get to spend this amount of time like being like just letting myself go. It's like I am whatever's around me for right now. It's like everybody craves that. And historically, it's been easier for people to whip themselves into that mentality in groups. That's church.
Okay.
Like people go to church to lose their sense of self because it's like, well, it's safe for me here as long as I'm sure that I'm surrounded by people who kind of see the world the same way I do and we all kind of have the same goals. So it's like now I can actually let myself go and just be a part of my environment.
I'm not quite sure that So I'm not quite sure that I'm following you because I'm still
We're talking too much about memes and not.
No, because I'm trying to get my example kind of across as a way of like me kind of understanding what you're kind of, you know what I mean? Like your overall thing. What the overall thing is this idea that ideas affect our evolution.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's when we're talking about DNA and the switches going on and off, we're talking about how it affects our evolution.
And we were also talking about free will. And
part of why we're talking about free will is because do I have control over these switches that are going on and off?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have control of the environmental influences that are causing that are interacting with the biofeedback of my DNA versus my offspring, right? And how are these ideas affecting that? Whether they're affecting it because of their creating behaviors that are assisting in my evolution, right? Because that's what I think one of the biggest thing about ideas is, right? That's why I'm going back to the altruism, because most people are selfish. Our whole economic system is set up on the fact that human beings are selfish. That they're like at the base level, we all want what we want.
Yeah.
And we're all overall going to go after what we want at some level. Some of us are going to be more aggressive than others. You going to be able to make it, bro?
Yeah, I'm good.
So
I'm just paying attention.
Got you. Okay, so my bad because I stopped paying attention, and now so you know, since the majority of people are going to be selfish, and every now and then you have one that's altruistic, right? And I'm going to use some of our greater religious figures because I think they are the epitomes of some of the altruistic people, that they're living their lives for us, right? Jesus doesn't go out to cause trouble and get himself killed because that's what he wanted to do, right? He didn't have some I want to hang on a cross fetish, is my point, right? He was being altruistic. He felt that he understood the truth as he felt it was being communicated to him through him, and he followed that all the way to his death, right? By him doing that, he brought attention to his altruism, right? He brought attention to that way as being a sacred way, as being a divine way, right? The idea that we're not living selfishly. Like that's one of the biggest things that I would think that man was teaching us, right? Is that
do unto your neighbor as you would have them do unto you.
It's being like, less selfish.
Like, what's the difference?
It's like care. And what's his example? It's like this guy that's kind of like, you know, if we could put it in modern American context, it's like a white man and a black man, right? I mean, if we put it in a modern American context, the Samaritan can be the black man or whichever way you want to do it, so it's not racist for you, okay? But the Samaritan, it can be the black man, and the guy walking by could be a white man, right? And it could be the fact that we're not neighbors because the white man's from a small town, and the black man's from a big town, okay? And the white man came to visit the big town, and he saw the black man on the ground, and he decided to help him because he wasn't selfish, right? It wasn't about that he was his actual neighbor. It wasn't that he was kin. It was that he was this other, right?
Yeah.
It's simply that's it. He is the other. He is not one of my people, right? But yet, because you know what I mean? Because that's the context to break this down so you can get off your racist part right here. The Samaritans and the Jews at that time, they had conflict, right? They were two separate people. They were like the Bloods and the Crips kind of thing, right? Like they didn't really get along. They're like the Hatfields and McCoys kind of thing, right? They don't really like each other, okay? And that's why he chose to use that example when describing who is a neighbor, right? That's part of the big pow and the pop and the zest that it had to the modern audience, right? Was that they understood that it was dealing with crossing those social barriers of we don't like the other group, right? Point being, Jesus dies, and look how much his idea has spread. Now it hasn't spread all over the world, and it's been co-opted and blah, 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 blah. But it's still there. The meme is still there.
Yeah.
right?
There's still like these little sprinkles of themes. There's these universal memes that it's like even when you read like a new version, like New Testament gospel, like an NIV like edition.
Yeah.
Even when you read the most modernized, basic bitch language version of the Bible that you can, like it's been so translated and over translated and retranslated that it's like you can just tell it's like, okay, I'm basically reading the Urban Dictionary version of the Bible. Because that's the thing.
You're not, yeah.
I'm saying when you do that, you can recognize certain ideas. And there are a lot of the same ideas that correspond with like Buddhist ideas. It's like, dude, Jesus' way of saying it is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And Buddha's way of saying it is what makes you think you're different than that guy? What makes you think you're any different?
Well, Buddha would say you do it to him, you're doing it to yourself anyway.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's what they're both saying. But like, they both are kind of making the same point. Like, look, dude, this is basics. Just stop and ask yourself, like, what's the difference between me and him? Is there a difference? Because if there is a difference, that's important to know. But is there, or are you just imagining that?
Well, I think that brings up a whole, by you mentioning Buddha and me thinking about Buddhism and Hinduism in this line of thinking, it goes back to that idea of free will.
Yeah.
Because if I've created karma, see, I'm not gonna work on this idea that I'm some soul that returns over and over again. I'm gonna work on the idea that my daddy did some shit, his daddy did some shit, and his daddy did some shit. And all of their choices have repercussions for my present moment.
All my ancestors' problems they couldn't solve, I've inherited some now.
Right. But so, for instance, for many years, the white Europeans dominated the globe. I mean, literally went around and just kicked everybody's ass. They had a technology and a power to use that technology in a society, a cultural society of shipping and traveling these oceans like nobody's business. Yeah. And as a result, they took power in a large portion of the world. And then they thought that they were superior because they had that ability in that moment in time. I have to live from the repercussions of that because I got a whole continent of Africa right now that's still dealing with they're still trying to get out of those decisions. They're still trying to get free of those shackles, right?
Unless you're South Africa.
But the black people in Africa are still trying to get free of those shackles. I mean, that's even a great example of how the immediacy of how recent and how current,
how profound,
it is, how profoundly current
of a meeting that was,
how current this situation is. And so, I have to deal with that in the modern context as we evolve and as we move and we become the global village that we really don't have a choice of being or not being. Right. And so yeah, I have to deal with those. I also have to deal with the fact that I am 6.5% Native Mexican. And that 6.5% of Native Mexican has a little bit of a grudge against the other 83.5% white British island person that I am. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Okay. It's a joke. It wasn't funny. Don't put anything in the comments. But you know what I'm saying? Like those same ideas they cause behaviors, they cause ripples. But to me, that's not a DNA. Yes, it affects evolution. It's not in my DNA. It's not a trigger in my DNA.
It's something beyond your DNA.
It is.
It's an idea.
And I don't have any control over it.
Yeah, it's an idea.
I don't have any free will over it.
That's pulling your strings.
I can't just free will it.
That's fine. You
can't free will.
You don't have to have perfect control over. You don't have to have perfect control over the steering wheel on the ship. You just have to know, okay, where's everything at?
So here's part of my thing with free will. I don't choose when and where I'm born. Okay, Mom, I get it. You say that we all choose our parents because we all choose our parents based on what we need to grow and evolve spiritually.
That sounds silly.
No, but she's got, and you know what? I'm not crushing on Mom because it's actually a valid idea. It's a valid meme to me.
To a degree.
But I'm not co-signing on it necessarily, right? I don't think we choose when and where we're born. I think it just happens.
I think
Because I don't think the egg chooses which sperm impregnates it. And maybe it does.
No, but there's certain ideas from before you were physically born. There's certain ideas that have implanted themselves in your head.
But if they're there before me, then that means I don't have control over them, and therefore I don't have free will.
Maybe.
I don't have free will over them.
But if you're capable,
I don't have free will over my sex. I don't have free will over whether I'm born with a pussy or excuse me, a penis or a vagina. I don't have free will over that.
Yeah, but if you're capable of reflecting deeply enough on that and considering, like I just got this new bit of information, which was that Mom was always listening to really loud, heavy music.
What is free will again? What is the definition of free will?
It's the ability to author your own story that you're living in.
So I think that there are some people that feel that they have that ability. And then they get in a car accident and realize that they don't have free will.
If they think they have it. But the question is, does
it kind of goes into the whole law of attraction thing, right? Can I write it? Can I decide what is going on? And I'm sorry, but
you make the porcupine myth true by believing it.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's true. It's never true. The porcupine is never spitting his quills.
It depends.
Really?
You could think
because humans think that porcupines do this. All of a sudden, porcupines are going to start shooting their quills.
Well, should you define truth as, this is obviously true because it's a factual calculation about the world around me, or more of my kids have survived because I've believed this my whole life. The idea...
But the porcupines are never going to shoot their quills just because I believe it.
So that's where epigenetics comes in.
How?
Because we was talking about memes and genes, and I was also talking about genes and epigenes.
But I can sit here all day long and affirm that porcupines shoot their quills, and I can believe it to my core. And you're not going to go outside and find a porcupine that's shooting his quills all of a sudden because I believe it.
Well, right? Yes and no. Because look at it like this.
I don't think the reason why that porcupine's going to start shooting his quills is because it created an evolutionary
certain flies and butterflies have evolved to look like bumblebees.
Okay.
In every phenomenological way possible, they look like bumblebees. Did they do that because at some point along the line, did all of those individual electrodes realign themselves because the butterfly just physically was like, oh, okay, so if I look like I have pollen, then I'll blend in. If I put the pollen on my skin, then that means that the more yellow my skin is, the more that my genetic memory line is going to recall, oh yeah, it's useful to look yellow. By continuing to put pollen on my skin, I don't even see that end of the color spectrum. I don't even see the shade of yellow that the pollen changes on my skin. But I've noticed that when I do this, it changes how I look to other creatures. And it's like over time, there's an idea that the butterfly or the moth or the fly comes up with, which is like, okay, I saw a bee doing this once, or my great ancestor did this once, where we noticed that bees land on flowers. So we started landing on flowers, and then the shit that sticks to you when you land on them, that tends to blend you in. So over time, your genes, without really being conscious about it, blend in to this new reality that you've discovered. That's basic evolution, and that's what a meme is. And that's also what epigenetics has been so useful for. It's basically like epigenetics is the idea of, okay, well, this phenomenon is real.
Yeah.
Because we know that, because if you keep a whole bunch of butterflies in an empty container for their whole lives, they'll stay basically the same rough, like, hue of colors that their parents were.
I have to admit, overall, with that example, and I'm going to take you at face value that's a real example that you've been told and that is true. It does kind of just basically refute most of any arguments that I could have against it, because that is a clear example of what would be an idea. It's a thought, right? It's that color and that stuff works for me, and so therefore I'm going to adjust to it. I mean, there's a biofeedback that's going on, and our eyes are part of that too. And so, but I mean, you kind of refuted that argument with the whole they can't even see that spectrum, right? Like something else is recognizing that this change.
It's some raw stimulus. I can tell that the circumstances are different.
But I think that I can't refute it based on that as examples. There's that example has pokes through way too many of my arguments.
Can I expand on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
What I've always found the most valuable about you and I sitting down and doing these video sessions is I don't think most people are used to hearing philosophical conversations. I noticed that when we first met, but it all clicked into place. It all made sense when I found out you spent, I don't even know how many years, but I know you spent time at seminary school.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I heard that, things started clicking into place. I was like, oh yeah, he knows how to think philosophically, because he knows like how far that rabbit hole goes when you start asking yourself, okay, well, why do I think that? Well, why did I think that? Well, I thought it because of these things, but why those things? Like when you just like take that level of introspection, that religion, philosophy, like studying the human mind and how it, I was going to say absolves itself, but it's more like, how does the human mind reconcile with itself? Because it's an odd thing to exist, is yourself in the middle of a world of other objects.
And then you go the step further where you're observing yourself in the middle of a world of objects.
Yeah. And it's like somewhere in the world above us, the world above us turns out to be a little bit more mundane than it is right here. Because it's like, if you think about exactly what's going on right now, you could look at it for every individual component and be like, oh, well, shit, what would it seem like if somebody was on the other end of this listening to me? But it's like, what we're doing is we're having a philosophical conversation.
Yeah, and one of the things that that I'm willing to do is say, okay, this is my current argument, this is my current understanding.
Yeah.
You give me an example of something, and you're like, look, but this happens, and since I don't have any, I'm not going to fight you on it, right? I there's still resistance in me that says I think that it's very rare, and I'm not sure in other examples, how we can really correlate an idea that is affecting DNA. I mean, that's because it affecting our culture, it affecting our survivability, and therefore affecting our evolutionary trajectory. Sure, I'll co-sign on that all day. But I'm still hard pressed that there's a lot of ideas that are triggering the switches within okay, so if our DNA is like this breaker box, right? The DNA is the breaker box, but the DNA is not doing the switching on and off. I personally believe that there are, there's a biofeedback between us and the environment, right? It's kind of a two-way street, right? This biofeedback that over time is going to make changes. For instance, the common understanding right now of evolution is that we come out of the Garden of Eden, which the biological genetic Garden of Eden is in Eastern Africa. It's the Great Rift Valley, which runs from like Tanzania up through Kenya, and through a few other countries. That's the idea of where humans originally kind of like we start coming out of the trees, we start walking around, right? That's the genetic
these
garden.
Tropical regions.
And so we're all from that area, right? And at that time, our skin, the melanin, rose to the top, making which was why we were so dark.
At some point,
because that protected us. And it had to do with how we interacted with the sun and the vitamin D that we need, because we make vitamin D with our skin and its interaction with the sun. And so as we walked up north, and this happens in like wave of people, but we walk up north, and the people that get up north, they start losing their pigmentation. Why? But it takes centuries, right? It takes generations for this change to occur. But the overall thing is that my white skin can process more sun and create more vitamin D with less exposure. Why is that important? Well, if I move from a place where the sun's around all the time and it's hot all the time, I don't cover my body. My whole skin, the whole organ of my epidermis is my epidermis. The epidermical organ called the skin, right? It has more surface to produce and process that sunlight into vitamin D. Vitamin D is hugely important to the human, and so I get up to a place where now it's fucking dark, it's cold, I have to wear a lot of clothes, and so now instead of all the surface except for a little tea leaf, right? To process the sun, I've got my face and my hands because everything else is covered, right? This and this has to be able to process and give me my vitamin D needs. That happens because I'm lighter skinned. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a genetic thing. That doesn't describe racism, though, right? Racism is based on the idea that the lighter your skin, the more elite you are. Now, you may say, why is that? Well, because if you had light skin, that means you weren't out working the fields. You weren't out working outside. You weren't working. You were elite. You were above. You were of the higher echelon. And so that is early on, at least my understanding, in places like China, Asia, and otherwise, where the whole dark skin versus light skin came from. Light skin people think they're better than dark skin people because in one sect, and we can break this down a little bit, but you understand what I'm saying? That's an idea, but that doesn't.
One of my great ancestors was so rich.
Okay, the reason why we're white has to do with the sun thing. I'm talking about the racism part.
Yeah,
the racism part. But I think that racism, what I'm talking about, like in Asia, is a lot different than what we're talking about, black and white. And I made that really convoluted, and I apologize for everybody watching.
We were talking about selfish.
Just punch the like button and let me know you didn't like it.
We were talking about selfish genes and selflessness.
And altruism genes.
These are ideas. Mm. And it's like the Buddha and Jesus, the whole do unto your neighbor guys, the Mr. Rogers of the ancient world. The good neighbors. Those guys throughout history, they all had this realization, which was, dude, one of the most important ideas you can have is just like, what's petty? Like, really stop and ask yourself, what's petty and what is worth being upset about? And if you pay attention to the pettiness, if you pay attention to the devil in the details, you'll find there's really not that much you should personally be upset about.
Can I hijack your thought there for a minute?
Yeah.
Can I just kind of switch it up a little bit? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
One of my favorite memes, one of my favorite ideas,
That's perfect,
is Socrates drinking the hemlock. Why does Socrates drink the hemlock? Socrates easily could have just said, "Yeah, you guys are right. I'm annoying." He could take the plea deal, so to speak. Right? Am I wrong in that?
No, his friends were like,
Yeah,
the story goes, his friends like showed up in his jail cell. They were like, "Dude, we got a way. We're gonna get you out. You just gotta come with us." And he was like, "Nah."
Right.
What
he had the opportunity to just like do a plea deal, right? He had an opportunity to just say, "Yes, I am everything that you say I am. Everything you say about me is true," and they would let him go as long as he just stopped doing what he was doing.
He could have said,
or he could have left and he could have gone to another community, right? That was another one of his options, if I understand correctly. He could have kind of gone into exile, right? So he kind of has three options: go into exile, drink the hemlock, or shut his mouth and just say, "Yeah, I'm guilty," right? But he doesn't. Why doesn't he?
He has that in common with Jesus.
Why doesn't he?
Because the one thing that he can control that nobody else can is he can live by this. He can believe in this idea.
Mm-hmm.
He can believe, you know what, it doesn't matter what you do to me. You can't make me say something I don't mean.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that.
And you can't use me for your politics.
That's a big part of it.
Right? Because he was a popular person within Greek culture. Very known, especially at the time when he's in his 70s or 80s by the time this court case comes around. Right? This man's been to wars and he's been done all. Socrates, by the time they kill him, he's lived a full life. He's been a good citizen.
He was a veteran
citizen. Like our good citizen.
He was a veteran citizen of Athens.
Yeah.
He was part of the sophisticated Greek intelligentsia.
Sure.
But he went into a war. He came out of the war when he got back to his parish or wherever he was in ancient Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Found out he had no money.
Mm.
But because he was willing to fight for Greece in the war, he was allowed the opportunity to rise up through the ranks a little bit. He was introduced up people high on the social ladder.
Mm-hmm.
One of these groups of people led him to getting initiated in the Eleusinian mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Which was basically there's receipts I can give for this, but point is, there's a dude who just dropped a whole book a few years back that I read about this. The Eleusinian mysteries from ancient Greece were basically these psychedelic rituals where they would bring all of the upstart, like up and coming aristocratic rich kids.
Mm-hmm.
And around their 16th to 18th year old, in their 16th to 18th year.
Like around their birthdays, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this was their graduation ceremony.
Got you. A rites of passage, so to speak.
Yes. They would bring them in. They would show them this incredibly complex, like mystical, like, all right, we've had you in the academy for 2.5 years straight now, and now is the time when all of you should have learned enough to either go crazy, want to kill yourselves, or you're going to last. You're going to come out the other side of this rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
A changed person. This was basically the Greek Eleusinian mysteries. It was this festival where the aristocrats would send their kids to go like achieve enlightenment before they went on and carried the next generation.
Sure. So Socrates goes through this, right?
Yeah.
And so he's part of kind of like he's initiated into like the kind of upper echelons, if you will, of the populace in Greece. He's a soldier, he's a veteran, he's actually a war hero, I think, in some respects, and it's been in more than one. He also is a statesman at one point in his life.
He comes back from the Eleusinian mysteries as the smartest person in his hometown.
Well, because
the wisest.
That's what it is, right? One of the oracles claims that he's the wisest man in Greece or on the planet or some shit like that. And so he says, no, I'm not. And I'm going to go prove the oracle wrong because I'm going to go look at other wise people. And this is where we get the Socratic method, because his way of discerning wisdom was to just break down your thoughts and your presumptions.
Have a conversation.
With questions, and to have a conversation, right? But it's more than just having a conversation, right? It's asking questions, right? That's a big part of the Socratic method.
Roping somebody else along towards, hey, I realized a while back, if I just follow my curiosity, I'm almost never bored. There's always...
But it's also a way of making a person look at their own thoughts.
Yeah.
Right?
It does both.
Right? Because it says, wait a minute, you have this logic over here and this logic over here, and they don't quite jive. Right? So what's a good example of that? Like when you can have like two things that seem like they totally make sense, but they just don't.
Paradox.
Yeah, a paradox. But like you can have this idea of justice, and then you have this other idea of policing, and in some way, this idea with policing, if you break and question it enough, doesn't really align with your moral of justice.
Here's a good example of this. Is darkness real?
Is darkness real? Okay. My first real response to this is there are a lot of things that people have created to name and label things, and once we start getting into the philosophical and we get above those labels, we can definitely question the reality of it. But from my immediate perception, is darkness real? Also comes into question, is light real? And if light is real, then darkness is real.
Is it though? Because, and this is where the Socratic method comes into all this.
Yeah.
Here's where I can flip that completely the other way around, rhetorically.
Let's go.
So, you know that light is real because of the things you can see by it. It's like there's a table here, there's a phone here, there's a remote over here, there's this busted ass rubber band. Point is, there's all these things you can see, but you can recognize that there's things you can't see, and you can recognize when there's a shadow. But the shadow is just where the light doesn't shine.
But if there was no light, there would be darkness.
Would there be such a thing as darkness if there was no light? Because you could feasibly have.
Well, that just goes down to how we label it. Because if there's no light, then we're going to obviously label things differently. Because first of all, we're not going to be using our eyes to discern things. We'll be using our ears or some shit like bats. You understand what I'm saying? So yes, darkness is real. If light is real, then darkness is real. If light is real, it's only real because there's something to it. But
it's an absence of the light. Things will adapt to. Yeah, there's less light here.
Sure.
This is how I survive, is when there's less light.
But there are places where there is pure darkness. And so darkness is real. Absence of light is real.
Point is that's there's an idea there of there is light. Light is real. The darkness is also real.
Yeah.
Even though one is just an absence of the other. These are both real. That's a good example of a paradox.
Yeah. Well, but I think my policing and justice one was kind of, you know what I mean? Like, especially when you're looking at like political things, because that's one thing that Socrates did, right? It's like, I want to make you question your presumptions.
Justice is
if,
blind.
if yeah, well, but so like for instance, me, freedom is very important to me. So what does that mean? Right? How do I define freedom? That was one thing that he was always going to break down is how do you define it? And then he's going to break down how the words that you chose to define it, right? Until you get down to the bare of it. But for me, right, you can question how free am I willing to be? Am I free? Is my freedom equality or is my freedom anarchy? Right? Where is my true freedom and what is freedom? So I'm going to go back to the free will question and with Socrates and bring this kind of full circle for us. The only part that Socrates could control and had free will over was drinking the hemlock. That was him exercising his free will. He chose to leave this earth. He was kind of peer pressured into it, but he chose to, right? He could have easily said, I choose not to drink the hemlock and exile myself, or I choose to shut my mouth or whatever. He doesn't do that, right? Because he's like, I'm not going to be bullied, right? I am a free man and I will maintain my freedom. And this is why he's my favorite. Because of him, now I don't think he has anything to do with Jesus, other than the fact that the Greeks in their culture really do a lot of melding with the Jewish faith that Jesus teaches and that Paul spreads. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these ideas, these memes, this meme of Socrates is a very big part of why Jesus is accepted among the Greeks. See, that's part of where the memes that the Greeks were able to overlay with Christianity, with the Jewish faith, and therefore Christianity, created Christianity.
And the memes.
For instance, the idea of half man, half God. In the Greek pantheon, there are all kinds of half God sleeping with people and having offspring that are half God and half human.
That's where the term.
So Jesus is easily accepted because this meme, this idea, is readily available throughout all of Greek culture, right? But they, see what I'm saying? They kind of use things. They manipulate. They manipulate the ideas.
Kind of like.
And again, so there's this meme of Socrates. I'm willing to die for my beliefs, right? Because part of his argument has to do with the gods, right? And him teaching young people and him questioning their current understanding of the gods.
I think that was one of his formal charges, was he was turning the youth atheist because they were questioning the gods. These are the gods that run shit. That's what we tell everybody. That's what everybody believes. Right. Nobody acts any differently.
And Socrates was brave enough to question them and to say, you're full of poo-poo caca. And he was teaching young people to poke holes into their theology, right? Into their presumptions, into their thoughts, into their ideas. Yeah. But it's him standing up for that, right? It's him standing up for that then is overlaid upon the Jesus story of another man that stands up for it. According to what we know, if Jesus is real, we can question the historicity. I think it's pretty safe to say that we don't question the historicity of Socrates. And even if we do question the historicity of Jesus, I don't give a crap, because that idea, that Bible and all the memes contained within it.
It's as Greek as it is Jewish.
It's as Greek as it is Jewish. Yes. But that, I mean, its influence on the world today, I mean, it's a real good example of how an idea can encompass the world and kind of.
It's a little bigger than Israel and Greece at this point.
Yeah.
It's been a very powerful meme.
Yeah. It's these two cultures and how they understand their relationship with the world. But more importantly, I want to stick on the idea that the truth is important. That's the idea that Socrates and Jesus died for. The truth.
Yeah.
And arguing for the truth and being free to express the truth and question the truth as it is dictated to us in the present moment.
Well, and here's the weird thing. Isn't that the same kind of truth as porcupines shoot their quills?
No, huh?
Isn't it the same kind of Isn't it the same thing? It's like, well, you said it yourself. It doesn't matter the historicity.
No. I don't think that that's the same thing, because when I hear you say that, when the leaders that be tell me that Santa Claus is real, and they will make me drink hemlock when I question that Santa Claus is real, that's no. I'm saying
That's even more
And
profound.
so if I have to believe, even though I can see with my own eyes, I can go grab a goddamn porcupine and he ain't gonna shoot no quills at me. Even though I can do that, if the government or whatever authority is enforcing that I believe that, and but with my own hands, my own eyes, I see it's not true, and they're like, you just have to have faith. Faith will get you through the things that you don't understand. You're just too ignorant to understand, and therefore you have to believe them. I think that's where ideas can also have a negative effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so that's how I see the porcupine. To me, the porcupine thing,
But you can see how the base. I heard Cornel West say this once. He was like
Cornel West.
He was like, I heard he compares Jesus and Socrates, and he goes, "There's two." He's like, "There's two primary figures in all of Western philosophical thought, religious and philosophical. It comes down to two people." He's like, Socrates and Jesus.
Yep.
And he said, what he says next is, and you know what's real funny about that? If you read all of the works published and publicized about them, you'll notice there's really only one difference between them. Socrates never weeps, and Jesus never laughs.
You talking about in the moment of death and like through their trial?
He's saying if you read anything that was publicized about them for the last 2,000 years, you'll realize what they have the most in common is what they don't have in common, which is they're both mainly preaching the same message. Think for yourself, live free. Like, you know what you should do. If you're real honest with yourself, you know what you should do.
See, I think really they were more is their folly in society was questioning society, questioning the status quo. They are, and that's what they die for, because they're dying because they're standing up against the mob. They're standing up against all the people that have to groupthink in order to feel safe.
Well,
and that will just sit there and they will literally co-sign, and they'll be like, no, Chet, porcupines really do. I can't believe why you would even argue about it. Why can't you just get along? Why do you have to argue about the porcupines all the time? They shoot their fucking quills, okay? And I'm like, no, they don't, bro. Go fucking look at one. Go grab one, good citizen, and tell me how far it shoots its goddamn quill. And then motherfuckers like, Chet, why can't you just get along? Why you gotta be so damn stubborn, you negative Nancy, you fucking Karen, you son bitch? I'm tired of you always arguing and being negative all the time. Jesus fucking Christ, just be positive, okay? God damn, porcupines throw their quills, damn it. You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden everybody gets around, they're like, I'm fucking tired of Chet. I'm tired of it. This motherfucker keeps saying that porcupines don't shoot their quills. They're gonna kill our kids. He's killing our children. And he's going to kill your grandmammy too, because he ain't getting vaccinated from the porcupine quill throwers neither. And goddamn it, he's going to kill us, so we got to kill him first. Get the fucking cross and hemlock, boys. It's time to have a party.
Yeah, but all the same. There's bad ideas, and then there's good ideas.
I think what I just did was a bad idea.
I don't think so.
But anyway, yeah.
But no, the point is so there's bad ideas like, hey, maybe your kids wouldn't be so goddamn stupid if you encourage.
But you see what I'm saying? That's what Jesus and Socrates died for. And that's why I love Socrates. Yeah. I love Jesus too. Because I think that the people that have the courage to stand up like that, to die for the truth, and even if the truth is really broken down to only what they believe in, nonetheless, right? To me, Socrates is literally killed because he wants people to question their own thoughts and their own truth. Literally.
Yeah, but I
They
think
killed him for it.
yeah, but I think it's even deeper than that. I think Socrates and
And they killed
Jesus.
too. Yeah.
I think Jesus and Socrates. One other thing that they have in common is that they both are encouraging you. Jesus is straight out telling you have it, but Socrates was kind of encouraging you to pursue it, and that's free will.
But yeah.
And
It's the freedom to make choices. It's the freedom to you get to respond to the external stimuli because you don't control the external stimuli.
But you can know what it is.
You can know what is.
You can see all the strings pulling you. If you can see all the strings pulling you, you can decide which ones to hedge your bets on.
Well, I think we're all at different levels of being able to see strings that are pulling us. You know what I'm saying? So okay, I'll give you. I'm there.
But
Again,
maybe that's the closest.
Again, it's the free will to make your choices based on your level of understanding of the strings that are
Well, and
being
even
pulled.
if that's not free
Right,
will,
because-
that's the closest you're going to get.
Because, like, I do think that that's the closest you're going to. You're right. The closest you're going to get is when you're offered the hemlock, you get to choose to drink it or not. He couldn't control anything else about it. He couldn't control that these people were bringing some arbitrary, trumped up case against him. Yes, I did use that word specifically on purpose. But he couldn't help that they bring trumped up charges on him, right? Isn't that ironic? But he couldn't help that they were bringing trumped up charges on him. You understand what I'm saying? The society had deemed him as a negative for society. He must be dealt with. So we must trump up these charges, blast him across the nation on all media outlets to tell everybody how bad this person is for us. He is going to destroy our society. He is going to corrupt our children, and he is going to kill God, right? Right? It's fair to say what they're saying, right? And so all these popular people in the elite classes get together, and they're like, Socrates must die. He must be dealt with. He must be silenced. He is, and Socrates stands there and says, no, there's not much. I can't control that you're bringing this case. I can't control anything about this situation, regardless of how ridiculous I think it is. But what I can control is how I respond to it, and therefore how I am remembered by it. And the martyrdom of he and Jesus is the martyrdom or the willingness to martyrdom of Mahatma Gandhi, the willingness to martyrdom for Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X are all these people that have been willing to stand in the face of death to speak their truth. I that is the meaning. And just like the altruistic person, because honestly, it's an altruistic behavior. Because it's much easier to do what Chet does and go hide in the woods.